The letter sat on the kitchen table between them like something fragile. Theo's hands, veined, trembling slightly, rested on either side of it, but he hadn't touched the envelope. Not yet. Outside, the November wind pressed against the windows of the old coastal house, making the glass shudder in its frames. Vivienne stood by the counter, tea kettle forgotten on the stove. She'd been reaching for mugs when he'd called her name. Not the casual Viv he'd used for the past 8 months. But Vivienne, slow, careful, like he was handing her something breakable. "I need to tell you something," he'd said. And now the silence stretched between them, thick with all the words neither of them knew how to say. The afternoon light came through the window at a slant, catching the silver in her hair, the way her cardigan hung loose on her frame. She was still holding the dish towel. He noticed that. He noticed everything about her now, had been noticing for months, though he told himself he shouldn't. "Theo," she said softly. Just his name. A question and an answer all at once. He looked up at her, and something in his pale blue eyes made her heart stumble. A kind of raw honesty she hadn't seen since the day they'd met, when he'd opened the door and she'd seen straight through to the loneliness he wore like an old coat. "I wrote this 3 weeks ago," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've picked it up 17 times. Put it down 18. The kettle began to whistle, a soft rising cry that filled the kitchen. Neither of them moved. "What does it say?" Vivienne asked, though part of her already knew. Part of her had known for months, in the way his eyes found her across rooms, in the careful distance he maintained, in the kindness he showed that felt like something more than gratitude. Theo's fingers finally touched the edge of the envelope. "It says," he began, then stopped. Swallowed. Started again. "It says everything I'm not supposed to feel. At 80 years old. About someone who," his voice caught. "About someone who came here to take care of me. Not to." "Not to what?" she whispered. The kettle screamed now, insistent. Theo looked at her with eyes that had seen 80 years of sunrises, but suddenly seemed young, uncertain, hopeful, terrified. "Not to make me want to live again." The words hung in the air between them. Vivienne's hand went to her throat. The dish towel slipped to the floor. And in that moment, in that kitchen filled with steam and fading light and all the careful distance they'd kept for 8 months, something shifted. The kettle shrieked. But neither of them heard it anymore. 8 months earlier, Vivienne had arrived on a Tuesday morning in March. The agency had called it a standard placement. An elderly widower, independent but declining, needed someone 3 days a week. Light meal preparation. Medication reminders. Companionship, mostly. The house was on Harborview Lane, number 43, the pale blue one with the widow's walk on top. She'd knocked twice before he answered. When the door opened, Theo stood there in a cardigan that had seen better decades, holding a coffee mug that said "World's Best Architect" in faded letters. His hair was white, uncombed. His eyes were the color of sea glass, clear, distant, a little worn by weather. "You're early," he said. "I'm on time," she replied gently. He'd looked at her for a long moment, as if deciding something, then stepped aside. The house smelled like old books and salt air. Every surface held a memory. Framed photographs of a dark-haired woman with a bright smile, model lighthouses on the mantel, maritime charts rolled and stacked in corners. The living room faced the harbor, where fishing boats bobbed in the gray morning water. "That was Marianne," Theo said, catching her looking at the largest photograph. "My wife. She died 3 years ago this June." Vivienne saw the way he said it, not with tears, but with a flat acceptance of someone who'd cried all he could and had nothing left but the weight. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it. "Everyone is." He set the mug down carefully on a coaster. "The agency tell you I don't need much? I can dress myself. Make toast. Remember to take pills most days." "Then why did you call them?" The question surprised him. He turned from the window. "My daughter," he said quietly. "Elaine. She lives in Boston. Worries I'll fall, or forget the stove, or," he trailed off. "She means well." What he didn't say, "She worries I'll disappear into this house and no one will notice for days." Vivienne understood. She'd seen it before, The children who loved from a distance, who called on Sundays, who meant well but couldn't bridge the miles or the silence. "Well," Vivienne said, removing her coat. "I make terrible toast, but I'm excellent at remembering pills. And I don't mind silence, if that's what you prefer." Something shifted in his expression, the smallest softening. "I've gotten good at silence," Theo said. "Me too," she replied. In the weeks that followed, they developed a rhythm. Vivienne came Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. She'd arrive at 9, let herself in with the key he'd given her after the second week. She'd find him usually in his study, surrounded by drafting papers and photographs of lighthouses. Pemaquid Point, Portland Head, Cape Nettic. "I designed 17 of them," he told her once, not looking up from a sketch. "Up and down the coast. Structures meant to guide people home." "Beautiful work," she said. "Lonely work," he corrected quietly. "I was away most of Marianne's and my marriage. Drawing light. Missing life." He didn't elaborate, but Vivienne saw it in the careful way he touched Marianne's photograph each morning. Guilt, worn smooth by repetition. She understood that too. Her own marriage had ended 15 years ago, not with drama, but with the slow erosion of two people who'd stopped truly seeing each other. Michael had been a good man. A distant man. She'd poured herself into work, into caring for strangers, because it was easier than admitting her own loneliness. "Do you have children?" Theo asked her one Wednesday in April. "No," Vivienne said, folding laundry by the window. "It wasn't. We tried, but it didn't happen. And then it was too late, and then we weren't together anymore." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Some women are meant to mother the world differently." She smiled, but there was something fragile in it. "I've cared for a lot of people. That counts for something." Theo watched her hands smooth a pillowcase, careful, methodical, kind. "It counts for everything," he said softly. She looked up, startled by the sincerity in his voice. Their eyes held for a moment too long. Then Vivienne returned to the laundry, and Theo returned to his sketches, and neither acknowledged what had just passed between them. By May, something had shifted. Theo began leaving jazz records on the player before she arrived, the kind with soft brass and vocals like honey. Vivienne brought flowers from the farmer's market, nothing extravagant, just daffodils or wildflowers in mason jars. They'd have tea at 3 o'clock. Not because his medication required it, but because it had become their ritual. He told her about the lighthouses. She told him about the people she'd cared for over 20 years. The composer who'd hummed opera while she changed his bandages, the grandmother who'd taught her to make pierogi, the veteran who'd cried only once, when she'd read him letters from his late wife. "You carry a lot of other people's stories," Theo observed one afternoon. "It's easier than carrying my own," Vivienne admitted. He understood that too. They were both people who'd learned to live quietly, to take up less space, to expect nothing, because wanting had only ever led to absence. But slowly, so slowly neither quite noticed, they began to want again. Theo started combing his hair before she arrived. Vivienne wore the blue cardigan he'd once said brought out her eyes. He made sure there was cream for her tea. She stayed 15 minutes longer each visit, then 30, then an hour. And neither of them named what was growing between them. Because naming it would make it real. And real things could hurt. It happened on a Friday in late June. Vivienne arrived to find Theo standing in the hallway, staring at a box of photographs he'd pulled from the closet. His hands were still, but his expression carried the weight of something newly unearthed. "Theo." He looked up, almost surprised to see her there. "I was looking for something else. Found these instead." She set down her bag and approached slowly. Inside the box, decades of moments frozen in silver and color. A younger Theo with dark hair and rolled sleeves, standing beside half-built lighthouses. Marianne in a yellow sundress, laughing at something off camera. The two of them on a boat, younger still, her head on his shoulder. "You looked happy," Vivienne said gently. "We were. When I was there." He lifted one photograph, Marianne alone at a kitchen table, coffee cup in hand, gazing out a window. She took this one herself. Timer on the camera. I was in Maine that week. Or maybe it was Nova Scotia. His voice dropped. I can't remember anymore. Vivienne saw it then, the way memory could be both gift and punishment. She looks peaceful, Vivienne offered. She looks alone. Theo set the photo down carefully. I gave her that. 38 years of marriage, and I gave her alone. The words sat heavy in the quiet house. Vivienne did something then she'd never done with a client. She reached out and touched his hand, just her fingertips against his weathered knuckles. You also gave her lighthouses, she said softly. Structures that guided people home. That kept them safe. That's not nothing, Theo. He looked at her hand on his. Didn't pull away. But I wasn't home, he whispered. No, Vivienne agreed. But you're here now. The words meant more than either of them acknowledged. Theo's thumb moved, barely, just a small shift that brought it against her finger. The touch was so light it might have been accidental. Except it wasn't. They stood there in the hallway, hands barely connected, while dust motes drifted through the afternoon light and the clock ticked on the wall and something unnamed passed between them. An understanding, a permission, a question neither was ready to ask aloud. Finally, Vivienne withdrew her hand. How about tea? She said, voice a little unsteady. That would be good, Theo replied. But neither of them moved immediately. The following Monday, Theo was waiting on the porch when she arrived. I thought we could walk this morning, he said. If you don't mind. Before it gets too warm. Vivienne had never seen him suggest anything beyond the routine. She noticed he'd shaved carefully, worn the navy shirt that made his eyes brighter. I'd like that, she said. They walked down Harborview Lane toward the waterfront, slowly, matching each other's pace. The morning smelled like salt and wild roses. Gulls called overhead. The harbor stretched out before them, dotted with lobster boats and sailboats swaying on their moorings. I used to walk this with Marianne, Theo said. Sundays, when I was home. We'd go down to the pier, get coffee from that little shack that's closed now. She'd tell me about her week, the garden club, her book group, the neighbors. And I'd listen, but I'd also be thinking about the next project. The next lighthouse. He paused where the lane met the beach path. I was there, but I wasn't present. Do you understand the difference? Yes, Vivienne said quietly. My ex-husband was the same way. Home, but somewhere else entirely. They continued walking, their shoulders nearly touching. I regret it, Theo said after a while. Not being present. It's the thing that haunts me most. Not that she's gone, but that I wasted the time when she was here. Vivienne stopped at a bench overlooking the water. Sat down. Theo joined her. My marriage ended, she said slowly, because neither of us knew how to be seen anymore. We'd gotten so good at being polite strangers that we forgot how to be anything else. She watched a sailboat tack across the harbor. After the divorce, I told myself I was fine. That I'd had my chance at love, and it didn't work, and now I'd just be useful. Take care of people. That would be enough. Is it? Theo asked. Enough. She turned to look at him. Really look at him, this man with his careful cardigans and sea-glass eyes and hands that had drawn light into being. I thought so, she said. Until recently. The words hung between them like a confession. Theo's hand rested on the bench between them, close enough that she could see the age spots, the fine tremor he tried to hide, the strength still there beneath the fragility. Vivienne, he said, and her name in his voice sounded like something precious. I need to tell you something, but I don't know if I should. Her heart was beating too fast. Tell me anyway. He looked out at the water, gathering courage. These past months, you've made this house feel less like a museum, less like a place I'm just waiting in. He paused, struggling. You've made me feel less like I'm waiting. Theo. Let me finish. His voice was gentle but firm. I'm 80 years old. You're here because my daughter hired you. This is your job, and I have no right to feel. He stopped. Started again. I have no right to look forward to Mondays the way I do. To stand by the window at 8:45 watching for your car. To care what cardigan you're wearing or whether you'll smile when you see I've made proper coffee instead of that instant nonsense. Vivienne's throat tightened. I have no right, Theo continued, his voice rougher now, to have fallen. He stopped himself. Looked down at his hands. The unfinished sentence seemed to fill all the space around them. Vivienne reached over slowly, carefully, and placed her hand over his on the bench. What if rights don't matter? She whispered. What if we've both spent so long doing what we're supposed to do that we've forgotten what it feels like to just feel? Theo looked at their hands, her fingers covering his weathered knuckles, both of them trembling slightly. I'm afraid, he admitted. Me too, she said. They sat like that for a long time, two people who'd learned to expect nothing, holding hands on a bench overlooking the harbor, while the morning light turned the water to gold and the world continued around them, unaware that something fragile and impossible was beginning to bloom. Finally, Theo spoke. We should get back. Your tea's getting cold. We haven't made tea yet, Vivienne said, a small smile in her voice. Then we should definitely get back, he replied. But neither of them moved. Not yet. Not while the moment still held them, gentle, terrifying, real. For 2 weeks after the bench, they were careful. Too careful. Vivienne arrived on time, left on time. She kept conversation light, the weather, the garden, a book she was reading. Theo responded in kind, polite and distant, as if they could unspeak what had passed between them on that morning by the harbor. But the house felt different now, charged with all the things they weren't saying. She'd reach for a dish and he'd hand it to her, and their fingers would brush, and both would pull away too quickly. He'd look up from his sketches and find her watching him, and she'd turn away, cheeks flushed. The silence between them was no longer comfortable. It hummed with awareness, with want, with fear. On the third Wednesday of July, Theo's daughter called. Vivienne was in the kitchen when she heard his voice from the study, strained, careful. Elaine, I'm fine. No, I don't need to move. We've discussed this. She tried not to listen. Failed. Because this is my home. Your mother and I built a life here. I'm not ready to. A long pause. I understand you're concerned, but... Another pause. Longer. When Vivienne brought him tea 15 minutes later, Theo was sitting at his desk, phone down, staring at nothing. Everything all right? She asked gently. My daughter thinks I should sell the house. Move to an assisted living facility in Boston. Near her. His voice was hollow. She says I'm isolated here. That it's not safe for someone my age to live alone in a house this size. You're not alone, Vivienne said before she could stop herself. Theo looked up sharply. She set the tea down carefully. I mean, you have support. The agency. Me. 3 days a week. Yes, Theo said quietly. 3 days a week. The words carried weight neither of them acknowledged. What did you tell her? Vivienne asked. That I'd think about it. He lifted the tea, didn't drink. She's not wrong. The stairs are getting harder. The house is too big. And I am alone, Vivienne. 4 days a week, I'm completely alone. Something in his voice made her chest ache. Do you want to move? She asked. He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know what I want anymore. But the way he looked at her when he said it suggested otherwise. That night, Vivienne lay awake in her small apartment across town. She'd rented it after the divorce. 1 bedroom, a galley kitchen, windows that faced a brick wall. It was practical. Affordable. Lonely in ways she'd stopped noticing until recently. Now she noticed everything. She noticed that she chose her clothes in the morning thinking about what Theo might see. That she drove the long way to his house so she could pass the harbor, remember the bench. That she found excuses to stay longer, reorganizing the pantry, watering plants that didn't need watering, reading aloud from the newspaper when he seemed quiet. She was 65 years old. She'd been a caregiver for 2 decades, trained to maintain boundaries, to keep professional distance, to never confuse compassion with attachment. And she'd failed completely. Because what she felt for Theodore Whitmore wasn't compassion anymore. It was something far more dangerous, something that made her breath catch when she heard his car in the driveway, that made her heart stumble when he said her name, that made her imagine impossible things. Like what it would feel like to be held by him. To wake up in that house overlooking the harbor. To be someone's choice, not someone's employee. You're being ridiculous, she told herself in the dark. He's a client. He's 80 years old. He's grieving his wife. And you're the help. The hired help who comes 3 days a week to make sure he takes his pills and doesn't fall down the stairs. But then she remembered his hand covering hers on the bench. The way he'd almost said the word fallen. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, like she was something precious and unexpected and terrifying all at once. She turned over, pulled the blanket closer. This was impossible. Everything about it was impossible. Friday morning, Vivienne arrived to find a car in the driveway she didn't recognize. Inside, a woman's voice, sharp, efficient, carried from the living room. Simply being practical, Dad. You're 80 years old. Living alone in a house with stairs. I'm not alone, Theo said, his voice tired. I have help. 3 days a week is not enough. What about the other 4 days? What if something happens? Vivienne hesitated in the doorway. Should have announced herself. Didn't. Nothing's going to happen, Theo said. You can't know that. Mom's been gone 3 years. You've mourned. Now it's time to be sensible. The woman, Elaine, must be Elaine, softened slightly. There's a beautiful facility near me. Private rooms, activities, medical staff on site. You'd have people around. Companionship. I have companionship. Dad. A pause. The caregiver isn't companionship. She's an employee. The words landed like a slap. Vivienne stepped back, breath caught in her throat. That's not, Theo started. It's kind that you're fond of her, Elaine continued, not unkindly. But you're paying her to be here. That's different than actual connection. You understand that, right? Silence. Vivienne couldn't breathe. I know what it is, Theo said finally, his voice strange, flat, distant. Good. Then you'll consider the facility. Another pause. I'll consider it. Vivienne backed away from the door, went to the kitchen, stood at the sink, hands gripping the counter. She's an employee. You're paying her to be here. That's different than actual connection. The words circled in her mind like gulls over the harbor, harsh, persistent, true. What had she been thinking? That this was real? That a widowed architect and his hired caregiver could somehow, what? Fall in love? Build something genuine when the entire foundation was a paycheck and a contract? She heard the front door open and close. The unfamiliar car starting. Leaving. Footsteps approached the kitchen. Vivienne. She didn't turn around. Couldn't. How long were you standing there? Theo asked quietly. Long enough. He was silent for a moment. My daughter means well. She doesn't understand. She's right. Vivienne turned finally, keeping her voice steady. Professional. I am your employee. This is my job. And we've been confused, I think. Both of us. Mistaking gratitude and loneliness for something else. That's not what this is, Theo said. Isn't it? Vivienne met his eyes. Be honest, Theo. Would you have looked at me twice if I hadn't shown up 3 days a week to take care of you? If I wasn't here, being kind, being present, being paid to care? That's not fair. It's a fair question. Theo stepped closer. You think I can't tell the difference between gratitude and, he stopped. You think I don't know what I feel? I think you're lonely, Vivienne said, hating every word. I think you miss your wife. I think your daughter wants you to move and you're resisting, and I'm convenient. A reason to stay. A warm presence in an empty house. Stop. His voice was sharp now, sharper than she'd ever heard it. And I think, Vivienne continued, her throat tight, that I've been foolish. Thinking this could be anything other than what it is. An old man and his caregiver, playing a connection because we're both scared of dying alone. The words hung between them, cruel, protective, untrue. Theo stared at her like she'd struck him. "Is that really what you think?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Vivienne forced herself to hold his gaze. "I think it's what your daughter thinks. And she's probably right. She doesn't know. She knows you're paying me, Theo. That's what she knows. And that's what matters." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Theo turned away, his shoulders slumped in a way that made him look every one of his 80 years. "Perhaps you're right," he said quietly. "Perhaps I have been confused." The words should have been a relief. Instead, they shattered something inside her. "I should go," Vivienne said. "I'll come back Monday. Keep things professional from now on." "Of course." His voice was distant now. Polite. Professional. She gathered her bag, her keys. At the door, she paused. Almost turned back. Almost said the thing she needed to say, that she'd lied, that it was real, that she was terrified because she'd never felt anything like this before and didn't know how to trust it. But Elaine's words echoed in her mind. The caregiver isn't companionship. She's an employee. So Vivienne walked out into the July morning and got in her car and drove away, leaving Theo standing in the doorway of his too-big house, watching her go. Neither of them cried. They'd both gotten too good at holding everything in. The weekend was endless. Vivienne cleaned her apartment until everything gleamed. Took long walks that went nowhere. Avoided thinking about Theo standing in his empty house, alone with his photographs and his guilt and the silence she'd helped him forget. On Sunday evening, the agency called. "Mrs. Ashford, we need to discuss the Whitmore placement." Her heart stopped. "Is he all right?" "He's fine. But he called this morning. Requested a different caregiver." The words landed like stones. "I see," Vivienne managed. "He said it was nothing against your work. You've been excellent, as always. But he felt it was time for a change. We'll be sending Margaret on Monday. She's very experienced with—" "Of course," Vivienne interrupted. "Whatever he needs." She hung up before the coordinator could say anything else. Sat on her couch in her small apartment, surrounded by the silence she'd spent 15 years building around herself like walls. And finally, she let herself cry. Not for the job she'd lost, but for the things she'd almost let herself believe in. 3 weeks passed like years. Vivienne took other placements. An elderly woman recovering from hip surgery. A man with early dementia who called her by his daughter's name. She was professional, competent, kind. She did her job. But at night, she dreamed of lighthouses. She drove past Harborview Lane twice, once by accident, once on purpose. Both times, she kept going. The pale blue house looked the same from the street. Theo's car in the driveway. Curtains open to the harbor view. No reason to stop. No reason except the ache in her chest that wouldn't fade. On a Tuesday evening in mid-August, Vivienne's phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello. Mrs. Ashford." A woman's voice, familiar somehow. "This is Elaine Whitmore, Theodore Whitmore's daughter." Vivienne's hand tightened on the phone. "Is he all right?" That's why I'm calling." A pause. "Could we meet? There's something I need to show you. Something I found." "I don't think that's appropriate." "Please," Elaine interrupted. "It's important. It's about my father. And you." They met at a coffee shop in town, neutral territory. Elaine was in her early 50s, dark hair streaked with silver, her father's eyes. She stood when Vivienne entered, gestured to a corner table away from the windows. "Thank you for coming," Elaine said as they sat. "I wasn't sure you would." "I'm not sure I should have," Vivienne replied carefully. Elaine pulled a manila folder from her bag. Set it on the table between them. "After you left, my father changed. He stopped arguing about the move. Agreed to tour facilities. Seemed resigned." She paused. I thought I'd won. That he'd finally accepted reality. Vivienne said nothing. Then last week, I came to help him start packing. He was in his study. And I found this. Elaine opened the folder, slid a stack of papers across the table. He'd hidden it in a drawer under his drafting papers. Vivienne looked down. The pages were covered in Theo's careful handwriting, dated entries, like a journal. Her eyes caught her own name, again and again. I shouldn't have read it, Elaine said quietly. But I did. And now I need you to read it too. March 15th. A woman came today. Vivienne. The agency sent her. I told myself I didn't need this. Strangers in my house, reminders that I'm declining, that I can't manage alone anymore. But when she knocked, something in me hoped. For what, I don't know. She has kind eyes. She didn't fuss. Didn't treat me like I'm fragile. Just asked what I needed and listened when I told her, mostly nothing. Mostly just to be left alone with my ghosts. But after she left, the house felt different. Less like a tomb. April 3rd. Vivienne brought flowers today. Daffodils in a mason jar. She set them on the kitchen table without ceremony, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I haven't had flowers in this house since Marianne's funeral. I wanted to tell her that. Didn't. I'm afraid if I speak too much, she'll see how lonely I am. How grateful I am that she's here, even for just a few hours. Even though she's paid to be. May 20th. We had tea on the porch this afternoon. She told me about a patient she once cared for, a composer who hummed while she changed his bandages. The way she told it, with such warmth, such attention to his dignity, I realized something. She doesn't see her patients as work. She sees them as people, as stories worth remembering. I wonder what story she sees in me. An old widower with too many regrets? A man waiting to die in a house full of memories? Or something else? June 12th. I'm in trouble. That's the only way to say it. I'm 80 years old, and I'm in trouble. Today we walked to the harbor. She told me about her marriage, how it ended not with anger but with silence. How she thought she'd be fine alone, that usefulness would be enough. I understood every word. I've been useful my whole life. Built things that mattered. Saved lives, in a way. Those lighthouses guided countless ships home. But I failed to guide myself home. To Marianne. To the life we could have had if I'd just been present. And now, impossibly, I'm being given a second chance. Not with Marianne. I'll carry that guilt until I die. But with Vivienne. With someone who sees me. Who makes me want to be seen. This is foolish. She's my caregiver. She's paid to be kind. I'm an old man who should know better. But God help me, I don't want to know better anymore. June 26th. I almost told her today. On the bench by the harbor, I almost said it, I'm falling in love with you. The words were right there. Simple. True. Terrifying. But what right do I have? What could I possibly offer someone like her? A few years at best before I'm too infirm to care for myself. A house full of another woman's memories. A daughter who will think she's taking advantage of me. A fortune hunter preying on a lonely old man. None of that is true. Vivienne would never. She's the least mercenary person I've ever met. But Elaine won't see it that way. The world won't see it that way. So I said nothing. I've gotten very good at saying nothing when it matters most. July 20th. Elaine visited today. She talked about facilities, about safety, about being practical. And she said something that broke me. The caregiver isn't companionship. She's an employee. Vivienne heard. I saw her face when she came into the room. She'd been standing in the hallway listening. And in her eyes I saw something close. Something die. She thinks I agree with Elaine. She thinks I see her as just an employee, a paid companion, someone convenient. I tried to tell her otherwise. But she'd already built the wall back up. Protecting herself. Protecting both of us from the impossibility of this. Maybe she's right. Maybe it is impossible. Maybe I should let her go. July 22nd. I called the agency today. Requested a different caregiver. Not because I want someone else, but because I can't keep doing this. Can't keep pretending I don't feel what I feel while watching her pretend the same. It's too painful. For both of us. If I can't have her, really have her, not as an employee but as something more, then I can't have her at all. Margaret starts Monday. She seems nice. Competent. She's not Vivienne. Nothing will ever be Vivienne. August 10th. I'm writing this letter. The one I couldn't give her. The one I wrote and rewrote 17 times. I don't know if I'll ever send it. Probably not. But I need to put the words somewhere, even if it's just on paper. Even if no one reads them. Vivienne. I've spent 3 years mourning my wife. Mourning the time I wasted, the moments I missed, the presents I failed to give her. And then you walked into my house on a Tuesday morning, and slowly, so slowly I barely noticed, the morning began to lift. You made me want to comb my hair, to make proper coffee, to walk by the harbor in the morning light, to be present, not for someone who's gone, but for someone who's here. You made me want to live, Vivienne. Not just exist. Not just wait for the end in a house full of ghosts, but actually live. I know the circumstances are impossible. I know I'm too old, too damaged, too burdened with the past. I know you deserve someone who can give you decades, not years. Someone without a grieving daughter who thinks you're after money. Someone who hasn't already squandered one chance at love. But here's what I've learned in 80 years. Love doesn't care about circumstances. It doesn't wait for permission or perfect timing. It just arrives, unexpected, inconvenient, impossible, and asks one simple question. Will you be brave enough to say yes? I was not brave with Marianne. I loved her, but I didn't show up. I didn't choose presence. I want to be brave now. With you. For whatever time I have left. I'm not asking you to be my caregiver. I'm asking if you'd consider being something else entirely. Something I don't have words for yet, but feels like hope. If this is madness, then I'm mad. If this is foolishness, then I'm a fool. But I'd rather be a fool who tried than a wise man who stayed silent. Yours. Theodore. Vivienne's hands were shaking. Tears blurred her vision. He never sent it, Elaine said quietly. I found it in his desk. Along with all these journal entries. Why are you showing me this? Vivienne whispered. Elaine was quiet for a moment. Because I was wrong. About you. About what you mean to him. She paused. And because my father is the loneliest I've ever seen him. He goes through the motions, takes his pills, eats what Margaret prepares, agrees to everything I suggest. But he's not there. He's just absent. I can't, Vivienne started. I'm not asking you to do anything, Elaine interrupted gently. I just thought you should know the truth. What he feels. What he can't say. She stood, preparing to leave. My mother loved my father. But she spent most of their marriage loving him from a distance, waiting for him to come home, waiting for him to choose presence. Vivienne looked up. He's choosing presence now, Elaine said. Maybe for the first time in his life. The question is, will you let him? She left the folder on the table and walked out, leaving Vivienne alone with pages covered in handwriting that looked like heartbreak, like longing, like the bravest thing an 80-year-old man had ever written. Vivienne sat in the coffee shop long after Elaine left. The folder lay open before her, pages filled with Theo's careful script, every word a small act of courage, every entry a piece of himself he'd been too afraid to show her directly. She read them again. Then once more. I'm falling in love with you. You made me want to live. Will you be brave enough to say yes? Outside, the August afternoon was turning to evening. That soft, golden hour when the light makes everything look like it's already a memory. People walked past the window. Couples holding hands. A family with children. A woman alone, eating ice cream, content. Vivienne thought about the last 15 years. The apartment with windows facing brick. The careful distance she'd maintained with everyone. The belief that she'd had her chance at love and missed it, and now the only thing left was to be useful. to care for others, to take up less space in the world. She'd made herself small. So small she'd almost missed this impossible, terrifying, beautiful thing that had grown between her and a man who sketched lighthouses and carried his regrets like stones, and looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd forgotten how to ask. She pulled out her phone, stared at it for a long moment. Then she drove. The pale blue house on Harborview Lane looked the same as always. Theo's car in the driveway. Lights on in the study. The widow's walk catching the last of the sunset. Vivienne parked on the street. Sat for a moment, gathering courage. Then she walked to the door and knocked. Footsteps. The door opening. Theo stood there in his familiar cardigan, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, an expression of polite surprise that shifted to something else entirely when he saw who it was. Vivienne. Just her name. But the way he said it, like relief, like pain, like hope he'd been trying not to feel. "Can I come in?" she asked. He stepped aside wordlessly. The house smelled the same, books and salt air and that particular quality of late afternoon light through old windows. Everything familiar. Everything changed. They stood in the hallway, neither quite knowing how to begin. "I met with your daughter today," Vivienne said finally. Theo went very still. "Elaine. She showed me something. A folder." Vivienne's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. Journal entries. A letter. All color drained from Theo's face. "She had no right." "She had every right," Vivienne interrupted gently. "Because you weren't going to tell me, were you?" Theo looked away, toward the window, the harbor beyond. What would have been the point? "You made it clear that day. What this was. What it wasn't." "I was scared," Vivienne said. "So was I. I was protecting myself. So was I." They stood in the quiet, the truth finally between them. "Theo." Vivienne stepped closer. "Look at me." He turned slowly, and she saw it in his eyes, all the longing he'd tried to hide, all the hope he tried to bury, all the love he'd written in journals but couldn't speak aloud. "Your daughter was right about one thing," Vivienne said. "I was your employee. You were paying me to be here. That's how it started." Theo's shoulders slumped slightly. "But that's not why I stayed," she continued, voice soft. "I didn't stay for the paycheck. I stayed because you made tea at 3 o'clock exactly. Because you left jazz records playing before I arrived. Because you told me about lighthouses like you were sharing secrets. Because when you looked at me, I didn't feel invisible anymore." Theo's breath caught. "I stayed," Vivienne whispered, "because for the first time in 15 years, I felt like someone saw me. Not as useful. Not as the help. But as myself." "Vivienne." "I'm 65 years old," she said. "I spent my whole marriage feeling unseen. I spent my divorce telling myself I was fine alone. I spent 20 years taking care of everyone else because it was easier than admitting how lonely I was." Her voice cracked slightly. "And then I met you. And you looked at me like I mattered. Like I was more than what I could do for you." Theo's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You wrote that you're in trouble," Vivienne said. "That you're falling in love with an 80-year-old man who should know better." "I did know better," Theo said roughly. "That's why I said nothing." "But what if knowing better isn't the same as being right?" Vivienne took another step closer. "What if being careful and being scared are the same thing? What if we've both spent so long protecting ourselves that we've forgotten what it feels like to be brave?" She was standing right in front of him now, close enough to see the fine lines around his eyes, the tremor in his hands, the way his breath had gone shallow. "You asked in your letter," she said quietly, "if I'd be brave enough to say yes." Theo's voice was barely a whisper. "And are you?" Vivienne reached up slowly, giving him time to pull away, time to say this was a mistake, and placed her hand against his cheek. His skin was warm beneath her palm. He leaned into the touch like a man who'd been cold for years and had forgotten what warmth felt like. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "This makes no sense. The age difference, the circumstances, what people will say." I know, Theo said. Your daughter will think I'm after your money. I know. We might only have a few years. I know. His hand came up, covered hers against his cheek. I know all of it, Vivienne. Every reasonable objection. Every practical concern. I've listed them all in my head 1,000 times. And, she whispered. And none of it matters, Theo said, his voice breaking. Not when you're standing here. Not when you're looking at me like that. Not when I'm 80 years old and I finally understand what it means to be present. To choose someone. To stop hiding behind regret and fear and all the reasons why I should stay safe. Tears spilled down Vivienne's cheeks. I spent 38 years with a woman I loved, Theo said, but I was never fully there. I was always somewhere else, building things, chasing projects, missing the moments that mattered. His other hand came up to cup her face. I don't know how much time I have left. Maybe 10 years. Maybe 10 months. But whatever it is, I want to spend it here. Present. With you. If you'll have me. Theo. I'm not asking you to be my caregiver, he said, repeating the words from his letter. I'm asking if you'd consider being something else entirely. What? Vivienne whispered, though she already knew. Mine, Theo said simply. And I could be yours. However that looks. Whatever that means. For however long we have. Vivienne closed her eyes. Felt his thumbs brush away her tears. Felt his breath against her forehead. Felt, for the first time in longer than she could remember, like she was exactly where she belonged. Yes, she whispered. Theo went very still. Yes. She opened her eyes, met his gaze, those sea-glass blue eyes that had seen 80 years of sunrises and still somehow looked young when they looked at her. Yes, she said again, stronger now. I'll be brave. With you. For whatever time we have. And then, in the hallway of his too-big house with the light fading outside and the harbor going quiet beyond the windows, Theodore Whitmore, 80 years old, widowed, careful, guarded, did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. And he kissed her. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't passionate. It was gentle and uncertain and achingly tender. The kiss of two people who'd forgotten what this felt like, who were relearning how to be open, how to be seen, how to let themselves want something just for themselves. When they pulled apart, both were crying. I don't know how to do this, Vivienne admitted, her forehead resting against his. Neither do I, Theo said. I'm spectacularly out of practice. She laughed, a small watery sound. What do we do now? Theo was quiet for a moment. Then, would you like some tea? It was such a simple question. Such an ordinary thing. But somehow it felt like the beginning of everything. I'd love some tea, Vivienne said. They walked to the kitchen together, hands clasped between them. Two people who'd spent too long being careful, finally choosing to be brave instead. Outside, the August evening settled over the harbor. The lighthouse in the distance began to glow, sending its steady beam across the darkening water, guiding ships home. Guiding them home too. 6 months later, on a February morning when the harbor was frosted with ice and the sky was that particular shade of winter blue, Vivienne woke up in the pale blue house on Harborview Lane. Not in the guest room, where she'd slept those first nervous weeks after they decided to try this impossible thing, but in Theo's room. Their room now. The space had changed gradually, her books on the nightstand beside his, her slippers by the door, photographs of both their lives mingled on the dresser. Marianne's picture still sat on the mantel downstairs, but it no longer felt like a shrine. Just a memory. Honored, but no longer haunting. Theo was already awake, sitting by the window in the old armchair, sketchpad in his lap. He was drawing something. She could see the careful lines taking shape, the way his hand moved with the same precision it always had, despite the tremor. "You're up early," she said softly. He looked over, and his face did that thing it did now, softened, opened, like seeing her was still a small miracle he hadn't gotten used to. "Couldn't sleep," he said. "Too much light." She smiled, understanding. The winter sun came through these windows fierce and clear, turning everything silver. Vivienne got up, wrapped herself in the robe that hung on the back of the door, his robe really, but she'd claimed it weeks ago, and crossed to where he sat. Looked down at the sketch. It was a lighthouse, but not one of his usual technical drawings. This one was looser, more impressionistic. And at the base, barely outlined, two figures stood together, facing the water. New design? She asked. Memory, Theo corrected. He set the pad aside, pulled her down to sit on the arm of his chair. Of last week, when we walked to the point. She remembered. They'd bundled up against the cold, walked the long path to where the old lighthouse stood, and stayed until sunset. Hadn't talked much. Just stood together, his arm around her shoulders, watching the light begin its evening work. It was a good day, Vivienne said. They're all good days now, Theo replied quietly. It wasn't entirely true. There were hard moments too. Days when his arthritis flared and he was frustrated with his body's limitations. Nights when Vivienne woke up afraid of how much this meant, how much it would hurt when it ended. Conversations with Elaine that were still sometimes tense, though warming slowly. But the good outweighed the hard. By so much it almost scared her. I have something for you, Theo said suddenly. It's not my birthday. I know, but I made something anyway. He reached into the drawer of the side table, pulled out a small box. Open it. Inside was a key. Old brass, simple, worn smooth. It's the key to the lighthouse, Theo said. The one at Pemaquid Point, the first one I ever designed. I've had it for 50 years, never could quite bring myself to throw it away. He took her hand, pressed the key into her palm. I want you to have it. Theo, I can't. You can, he said firmly. Because that's what you've done for me, Vivienne. You've been a light, guiding me back, reminding me what it means to be present, to be here, to choose life instead of just waiting for it to end. Her throat tightened. I wasted so much time, Theo continued, his voice soft but steady. With Marianne. With my own life. Always somewhere else, always chasing the next thing, never quite here. He cupped her face with both hands. But with you, I'm here. Every moment. And whatever time we have, 5 years, 5 months, 5 minutes, I'll be here for all of it. Vivienne's eyes filled. I love you. They'd said it before, of course. But it still felt new every time. Still felt like the bravest thing either of them had ever admitted. I love you too, Theo said. More than I knew I could still feel. They sat together in the winter light, her perched on the arm of his chair, his arms around her waist, the key pressed between their joined hands. After a while, Vivienne said, Elaine called yesterday, while you were napping. Oh. Theo's voice was carefully neutral. She invited us to dinner. Next month. She wants us to meet her family properly. Her husband, the kids. Vivienne paused. She said she's glad you found someone. That you seem happy. Theo was quiet for a moment. Then, I am happy. Happier than I have any right to be at 80 years old. You have every right, Vivienne said firmly. We both do, he agreed. That's what I'm learning. That happiness doesn't have an expiration date. That love doesn't care about timelines or appropriateness or what other people think should make sense. He pulled back slightly, looked at her, really looked at her, the way he'd been doing since that first day she knocked on his door. You know what the hardest part of getting old is? Theo asked. It's not the body failing. It's the way people stop seeing you as someone with a future. Someone who can still want things. Still feel things. Still begin things. Vivienne nodded. She understood completely. But you saw me, Theo said. From the very beginning, you saw me. Not as someone to take care of, but as someone who could still matter. Still choose. Still love. You did the same for me, Vivienne whispered. I thought I was done. That I'd had my chance and missed it, and now I was just useful. But you made me feel seen again. Wanted again. Like I was more than what I could do for other people. They stayed like that a while longer, watching the light shift across the harbor, the winter morning turning the water to glass. Finally, Theo said, "Should we have tea?" Vivienne smiled. "Their ritual. Their beginning." "I'll make it," she said. "We'll make it together," he corrected. Downstairs, as the kettle heated and Vivienne set out cups and Theo found the honey they both preferred, the house felt alive in a way it hadn't in years. Not museum quiet. Not haunted by absence. Just lived in. Warm. Home. Through the window, the harbor stretched out. Boats swaying on their moorings, gulls calling, the lighthouse in the distance beginning to fade as daylight took over its work. Theo came up behind Vivienne, wrapped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being brave. For saying yes. For teaching an old man that it's never too late to choose presence." Vivienne turned in his arms, faced him. 80 and 65, both carrying decades of mistakes and regrets and roads not taken. Both a little worn by weather. Both more beautiful than they'd ever believed. "It's not too late for anything," she said. "As long as we're here. As long as we choose each other." "Then I choose you," Theo said. "Today. Tomorrow. For however many tomorrows we get." "And I choose you," Vivienne replied. The kettle began to whistle, soft at first, then insistent. But neither of them moved right away. They stood in the kitchen as winter light poured through the windows and the morning opened before them. Not guaranteed, not forever, but real and present and theirs. Some loves don't arrive suddenly. They don't come with fanfare or perfect timing or ideal circumstances. They arrive quietly, in the middle of ordinary days, between two people who've learned that the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be seen. They arrive like morning light, unnoticed at first, gradual, gentle, but once felt, impossible to forget. And in the quiet of that February morning, in a pale blue house overlooking the harbor, two people who'd thought their chances at love had passed discovered something essential. That the heart doesn't retire. That connection doesn't expire. That tenderness has no age limit. That sometimes the deepest love comes not at the beginning of life, when everything feels possible, but later, when you've learned what matters. When you've made your mistakes and carried your regrets and finally, understand what it means to be present. To choose someone. To be chosen in return. To stop waiting and start living. And in that understanding, they found not an ending, but a beginning. Final reflection. Love isn't found in youth alone, in perfect circumstances, or in the absence of scars. It's found in presence. In seeing and being seen. In the courage to try again, even when the world says you're too old, too damaged, too late. The heart keeps its own time. And it's never ever too late to come home.